So yesterday I was reading the results of some random expert league fantasy football draft that went on. And one of the surprising things I found in there was like Garrett Wilson went in the third round. It shocked me. And Garrett Wilson's an interesting guy to me because the moment I heard that Aaron Rodgers got traded to the Jets or was supposed to get traded to the Jets, whatever, I immediately thought, well, Garrett Wilson's going to be a value this year until he kept creeping up draft boards. ESPN has him right now at eighth overall, going at number 15. Uh, Eighth wide receiver eight going is 15 overall. And, his auction price is $41. Going over to underdog, the snobbier type league, we see Garrett Wilson is going wide receiver 9, but he's going at 13. So for him to tumble all the way down into the third round is interesting to me because this is a guy that like I would have put in my cart if I had the opportunity, but he's been so overvalued that like I'm probably going to have zero shares of him. And just the sheer fact that there was a league where he went probably closer to where he's appropriately supposed to be valued, it kind of changes my strategy because I have to be prepared for him falling to the third, or even being able to go up and bid on him when just wouldn't do it. And one of the things to understand about like why Garrett Wilson is undervalued, and we're going to talk about Michael Pittman here in a second, is last year Michael Pittman actually scored more points than Garrett Wilson did. And with all the bad problems, and I'm actually like going to probably get Michael Pittman in all my leagues because of the value that goes behind him. But Michael Pittman scored more points than Garrett Wilson, and we all know how bad the quarterback situation was in Indianapolis. It wasn't much better in New York. And Aaron Rodgers coming in, and I have Aaron Rodgers stats. Aaron Rodgers is not going to be this prolific, high volume passer. He pretty much has never been that in the league. Like I think his highest passing totals came in 2011, because he's relatively been on good teams in Green Bay that had good defenses and like to run the football. And I hate to break it to people, but like Aaron Rodgers is going to the New York Jets that has a good defense and likes to run the football. The New York Jets last year, like overall yards for a defense, they were like number 5 for defense. I think they were like the fourth overall rated defense last year. They don't need Aaron Rodgers to come in and put up a 4,600 yard passing season. They need Aaron Rodgers to come in and essentially do what he did 2 years ago when he won the MVP, which is throw 4,100 yards. What's this mean for Garrett Wilson? Well, it means that like if Garrett Wilson doesn't become Davante Adams, he's going to just be a wide receiver 2. He's going to go closer to 15 than, he's going to finish closer to the wide receiver 15 than he is going to finish to the wide receiver 5. And when we're paying this price to basically see how his season shakes up, where there's absolutely no pathway for him to jump up to these Davante Adams type seasons that we're used to, when in reality, the team just needs Garrett Wilson to do what he did last year, and Aaron Rodgers to get the football to other guys to win football games, as opposed to like I was saying, like Michael Pittman, who I'm really interested in because like it's crazy to me where he's going on ESPN. He's wide receiver 33. He's going 76 overall. We go over to Underdog, and I believe Underdog is better in this case. He's wide receiver 35, but he's going at 79 overall. And the bigger issue isn't that we should be looking at with like a Pittman versus Garrett Wilson. It's not a Rodgers versus Anthony Richardson. It's not even like the Jets bad quarterback situation last year versus the Colts bad quarterback situation. There's a new coaching staff in Indianapolis, but what we're really looking at is Anthony Richardson capable of being better than how bad the Jets quarterbacks were last year? And if Anthony Richardson comes out, and as the coaching staff has already said, like he needs reps. Well, you don't get reps by letting the guy run the football. You get reps by letting him throw down the field and throw interceptions. That's good for a guy like Michael Pittman. Alec Pierce, that's not necessarily good for your wins and losses. But if you're looking to develop a quarterback, hiding the fact that he's not a good thrower doesn't necessarily make him better. And I have written down someplace that like guys take steps. We always talk about, oh, this guy's going to take a step. Not all guys can take steps forward. Some guys are going to take steps back. Some guys are just not going to make steps because there isn't any room to move with where they're at. So like another guy that I was looking at that I've heard a few people talk about is like Marquise Brown. He's going 32 overall, wide receiver 32, 60 overall on Underdog. He finished, God, I don't even know where he finished last year, but on ESPN, he's going around the same range. If I can hunt him down, being thoroughly unprepared like usual. He's going wide receiver 29, 57 overall. Here's an example of a guy taking a step back. We have no idea when Kyler Murray is going to come back. The starting quarterback is going to be Colt McCoy or God, I just looked at the guy's name yesterday. Some rookie quarterback, I think from Houston, that is probably their better bet to have a better quarterback this year overall. I'm not a big Kyler Murray fan, but the thing is, like Michael Wilson is the rookie who's been injured his entire career at Stanford, and there's just you can make the same narrative in this case for Michael Wilson, the rookie, that he just becomes the target hog. And Hollywood Brown just isn't as good of a football player as we'd like him to be. So a guy that has basically no draft capital this year, he might actually be ranked on ESPN. Here's a guy with no draft capital or no value in the draft, and he has a better range of outcome than a guy that's going somewhere in outside the premium rounds, because it just doesn't mean that a guy gets better. Oh, like Marquise Brown is going to be the number one wide receiver in on a bad Arizona offense. What does that mean for fantasy? Well, it means that I should probably hedge my bet on the cheaper guy going someplace else that no one's talking about. And to start off with what we were talking about with like Michael Pittman and Garrett Wilson, like they were similar players last year. Their situations appeared to be like a little bit flop going into the season. And I would much rather take my chance on Michael Pittman being in that wide receiver 2 range after paying, wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 prices. Because what's the worst it's going to do? That guy's going to be a priority, drop for me, so I can churn my roster at the bottom. Because I spent a 7th, 8th, 9th round pick on this guy to do what everybody else thought he was going to do. As opposed to a guy last year that everybody was talking about him jumping up into the wide receiver 1 rankings, and he did have 141 targets. So like, I'm just saying, like, how are we building a narrative where Michael Pittman is worse than he was last year, and Garrett Wilson is so much substantially better that their ADPs right now should essentially be in the same range, and they're not. They've gone the other direction because we're not drafting rationally. We're drafting in this mob mentality of what we think we're acting like teenagers gossiping in high school, and we're not actually thinking about what's being said. We're just trying to stay ahead of the social curve, and that's the biggest thing that's going to like hurt a lot of people in the league. Is like, instead of trying to find the next Josh Jacobs or the next Cooper Kupp, like we're going out there and we're going like, I have to get a piece of Garrett Wilson. Why? Like, what is he going to do for you? What is the actual chances that he wins your league when you're spending like what essentially could be a first round draft pick on a guy where all the tea leagues are saying that this may not be the right move to make, just so you can be that guy that is like, look at the shiny toy I have for week 1. And again, like, I like Garrett Wilson. I just don't know the path that he has to be that impact guy versus a Michael Pittman, who I'm not saying he's going to be a wide receiver 1, but I could definitely see how he jumps up into the curve. Because the other thing that we talk about, like, and I really like Calvin Ridley this year, but he's been driven up so far in value. And Christian Kirk, who was like wide receiver 12 last year, he's like not even on people's boards anymore. Like a guy that's just a good safe pick to probably finish like as a top 20 wide receiver. Because if we're talking about teams taking steps forward, there's going to be the increase in passing volume for a team that runs at a high rate of play and throws the football a lot for Christian Kirk to relatively remain the same guy and then just add Calvin Ridley in there. And it's more than likely that like Evan Ingram and Zay Jones are going to be the guy that like hurt, that have their stats substantially hurt. But even when we look at it, we can sit there and go like Calvin Ridley can have like 1,100 yards, Christian Kirk can have 1,100 yards, Evan Ingram can have 1,100 yards, Zay Jones can have 1,100 yards, and the other trash can have their numbers, and it still would put us under 5,000 yards passing for Trevor Lawrence. So we could still make that narrative as long as we're not paying so much substantially for Ridley that we're driving the price of Christian Kirk down, thinking that Ridley's going to be amazing. And again, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get my shares of Ridley, but I'm also knowing that like I'm going to get a lot of my shares of Christian Kirk because he's probably going to finish around wide receiver 15, and he's not going at wide receiver 15. So I can go out and I can find these wide receiver twos. These are not going to be hard for me to do. Wide receiver twos will not lose you your league. They won't win your league, but they won't lose your league. And the other thing to point out to people, just why people are being overvalued. When I go to Underdog and I see that like Chris Olave is going 19 overall as wide receiver 12, and I go over to ESPN, and again, I think ESPN tends to be a little bit better, and they're just generic. Chris Olave is going wide receiver 15, which is more in line with a good plus minus for him. He's going pick 37 overall, which again, I think is fair. He's going to be a mid to low end wide receiver too. But Underdog doesn't have him that. Underdog has him as some magical, having some type of magical ability to potentially win your league. There's no chance that that's going to, let me rephrase that. It's limited. The chances that he's going to be able to do that are limited because of what that offense is likely to be. It's not going to be a good offense. It's not going to be a bad offense. There just aren't going to be targets going around, and he's limited in what he can do relative to the other receivers on the roster. I don't know why he's wide receiver 12. But the crazy thing about a guy being jumped up to as far as he is on people's draft board, because everybody's like, oh, second year jump wide receiver, second year jump wide receiver. Chris Olave last year scored less points than Cooper Kupp did. And you're expecting this guy to magically like double what he did. Chris Olave didn't even score as many points as Michael Pittman did. And we're factoring this into these guys, and we're trying to say like, well, I need to have this shiny toy, because if I don't have this shiny toy, my buddy's going to have this shiny toy. And when you ask your buddy like, why is that girl hot? And he's just like, I don't know, I think she is. There has to be an actual avenue for these things to occur, or you're throwing away your draft picks because you think that you need to make these picks based off of some arbitrary numbering system that somebody else has made. And again, like I've made my rankings, they're not much different than these rankings are, but the hard part is to factor in guys that I like, that I think can far exceed where I have to rank them, because I have to try and be fair with their ability to move up and move down. So like the other guys that, like, to finish off when we talk about running backs, so before I go too long, because I know everybody loves their running backs, like guys like Miles Sanders, guys like Rachaad White, guys like Dameon Pierce, they legitimately have roads to being, not just like to exceed their ADP and their rankings. They have routes to being closer to a wide receiver or running back one overall, and they're being downplayed. So like, would I rather have Chris Olave's guaranteed wide receiver 2 numbers, or would I rather spend in the same range Rachaad White, and they're literally like one draft pick apart? I know Rachaad White is on a bad offense. He's gonna probably get like 6, 7, 800 yards passing. The rushing yards that he gets along with that are going to be gravy. So just from a pure yardage standpoint, he's probably going to outproduce guys going in the same area. So now it just comes down to touchdowns, and a guy getting a certain amount of volume like that he might get, he could probably manufacture 10 total touchdowns between rushing and receiving. And now I'm talking myself into a guy that's like, well, like he could be a running back one. And I'm looking at a Chris Olave and I'm going like, how do you get me there? Like, and that's the thing with like a Garrett Wilson. It's like, how do you even get me to wide receiver 8? let alone the 15th most valuable player. I'm trying to create this narrative, and the narrative just doesn't exist. So why anybody would rank him there is beyond me. Because in order for Garrett Wilson to actually pay off, he not only has to finish as wide receiver 8, he has to finish above wide receiver 8 and the 15th most valuable player in the draft. That's what you're looking at paying to get Garrett Wilson. And again, like I really like Garrett Wilson. I just don't know how you get there when I can go down and I can get Michael Pittman, probably like in the 7th round of a draft, and I might actually have a guy that can go compete with a Garrett Wilson that is going, you know, what 5-6 rounds earlier. And what's the worst? What's it cost me if I miss on Garrett Wilson? Well, it costs me the potential ability to win my league. What's it cost me if I miss on Michael Pittman? Probably nothing. Like it's and the bottom of my draft, I kind of want to have guys miss because I need to be able to use those roster spots later on. So anyway, that's kind of what I have to say today, and hopefully someone finds it interesting. See you guys some other time.